Are you ready to rock and roll, Boston? I don't know if we're in Boston or not. I'm not. But I've heard that they are ready to rock and roll. Anyway, welcome back to Frag Makes Mistakes by Making Really Weird Openings, the series, and to Regenesis by CJ Cherryh. Frag also has great regrets because he has a splitting headache, and that did not help. So he's going to settle back and read a book, which will be nice. So yeah, the plot got kicked in the pants pretty big last time, in a huge way. So Sandur Patil calls Jordan Warrick, because he's like the only person with a phone number that she has now, and tells him, hey, things just got real. Dr. Thieu just got killed. He had a heart attack. If you care to believe that. And they have someone on the inside. She doesn't specify exactly inside what. Could be ReseuneSec, could be anything. She's scared for her life. Jordan should be scared for his life. And she wants to talk to Jordan Warrick. And Justin's like, well, that's going to be difficult. But, explain to me what's going on. And as he's talking to her, he loses connection because she just got defenestrated by a grenade launcher. She gets shot out of a 12th-story window from an explosion. So things have escalated pretty dramatically in Regenesisville. Let's see, this would have happened... Yeah, this would have been in Novgorod, not in Resume. And she's been trying to sell her apartment and everything. So anyway, it's all hands on deck for Ari's security force, her new security apparatus. And so Justin winds up having a conversation with Jordan to see if he can figure out just what the hell's going on, what Jordan can tell him. Then Jordan is typically a as per typical, a hemorrhoidal asshole about it. He's not a very nice man. He's upset that he has no work. He's upset that his life's been yanked around. He doesn't like that his son is hanging around with Ari's clone. It's everything. It's the same litany. So like Justin winds up even saying, hey, I'll even ask Ari if she'd be willing to look at, some of your work. And so you can start getting some work. And she winds up being like, no. No. I don't think I will do that, actually. Although she kind of relents and says, I won't critique his work, she said at the end of that note. I won't say a word. I know he'd like me to, so he can have a fight. But I'll just pass fail it. Tell him he'll have to write it well enough to get it past me, and that I'm going to be hypercritical. Bet he can't do it. Tell him that. To which Justin responds after reading that note, God, that's good, Grant says. I hope that she can convince Yanni, Justin says, and then Grant says, I want to see this one. So she is now going to confront Yanni. She has some questions for Yanni of her own about what's going on. So things have transcended the mere political, and now people are getting killed. They were all along, but it was kind of quiet and in the background because we would just kind of hear about it as the audience, and characters would just kind of hear about it, other than that one bombing that occurs towards the end of Sighteen, where Justin, goes off the reservation and is, on the run for his life for a minute. But it's largely not confronted our characters. It hasn't confronted anyone with a name, really, for the most part. So this has made it sort of personal, even though we barely know anything about Sandi/Sandur Patil. So here we go. This will be another fairly short one. And we'll go from there. Alrighty. Let me take a quick sip of water here, and we will get rolling with the grooving. Book 3, Section 2, Chapter 7. June 13, 2424, 23:10 hours. Pajama Conference. That was what they'd used to call it back when the enemy was Dennis, and they did it now that they ruled the wing and had a force of their own. Florian and Catelyn sat on Ari's big bed, Ari in her nightgown and Florian and Catelyn in their gym sweats, and Ari tucked her knees up with her arms around her ankles, and Florian and Catelyn sat cross-legged. They played the oldest game, Who's the Enemy? "Paxers are easy," Florian said. "They're always out there." Ari asked, "But have they got a leader?" "We have names," Catelyn said, "but there's no one single leader that anybody knows." "Anton Clavery, is that one?" "A new name," Catelyn said. "Anton Clavery doesn't show on any records. There is no CIT number." "An alias, then?" "Or a non-person," Florian said. "Births happen off the record, particularly Paxa children, and children from the Outback don't always get logged in." That was a small revelation, though not a huge surprise. She saw it could certainly happen if parents opting for natural birth didn't go to a hospital or register a birth for weeks, or months, or never got around to it. "They'd have to intend to do this long term. Motive?" "Secrecy from the authorities," Florian said. "No registry of DNA, fingerprints, retinals, nothing of the sort. Hard to track a non-person." "Hard to find a job, too," Ari said. "How do they manage?" Catelyn hugged her knees up. "They borrow. Their job is being off the records and out of the system. They borrow cards to ride public transport. People steal for them. They use a stolen card, then dump it before they get caught. They always have jobs. They're employed by clandestine groups. They're greatly prized for employment in some circles." "Do we have data on the parents of these individuals? Do we try to track pregnant people that don't register a child?" She was instantly interested, a subset of the Paxers, likely of other dissident groups. She'd about bet they were all CIT, not ASI, in origin. ASI descended weren't inclined to plot, and they'd prize that CIT registry for their children, but CITs were inclined to be argumentative. People who'd opted to leave where they were and emigrate to Citine hadn't been the happiest where they were, or they'd have stayed. They'd either been hungry for something they didn't have, or they'd been at odds with where they were. Maybe a certain segment was at odds with the status quo again. "There are names and numbers," Catelyn said. "Some are known. It's a felony to fail to register a child. Crime against a person." Mark a new element. Novgorod had existed at the outlet of the Novaya Volga since Reziun had existed near its headwaters. Her predecessor's mother, Olga, had seen the first days. So they weren't that many generations into Novgorod's existence. The Paxers had organized around opposition to the war, which had pretty well been going on since before Citine existed, in its Cold War phase. But malcontents had been there probably since the second batch of people got to Citine Station in its pioneer days and complained about some regulation the first batch of colonists had voted on. It took something to deny your offspring a number, a normal life, medical care, and schooling, and easy travel, and everything else you could do with a CIT number. "People groomed just to get past surveillance," she said. I suppose they're more used than users. I can't see it would be a happy life. But if there was a non-person who was really, really a black hole in the system, and he was really smart, he could get power, I suppose. If he was really determined, and if he had a lot of arms and legs, he could do damage." "He could," Florian said. "You'd only see the arms and legs. And Anton Clavery doesn't exist. A non-person is one possibility. A hollow man is the other thing you have to deal with. A dead person anybody can be if he pays the rent on the identity. Back during the war, there were even a few instances of Alliance agents, stationers. Not spacers that we never found. Oh, not spacers that we never found. The stationers didn't cope well, however."
There are a lot of schemes in Novgorod, Catelyn said. Cons and schemes alike. One thing Novgorod CITs are in my notes as being, Ari said, is really good at finding ways around rules. I'm betting CITs descended from Azi aren't much inclined to be non-persons, or use hollow men. I'm betting that's not in their psych sets. They'll go to birth labs mostly to have their children. They'll get them registered. A CIT number is important to them. I certainly don't want one, Catelyn said, but then I don't want to be a CIT. You're not setted for it, Ari said, which threw her into thinking about what would in fact happen to them if she died, the way Maman had left Ollie, and she didn't want to think about that. It was one real good reason for her to live a long, protected life, was what. 2 people relied on her, absolutely, and this Anton Clavery, whoever he was, whatever he was, threatened more than the Eversnow Project. He had brought her really unpleasant questions, like currents running in Novgorod among the Paxers, and the Rocher Party, the abolitionists who absolutely wouldn't understand Catelyn's rejection of being a CIT. They'd want to free her, depend on it. I'm glad I'm not, Catelyn said. Most of the troubles anywhere in the universe are CIT. Well, we do have our uses, Ari said, a little more cheerfully. So we don't have to do things, Florian said. You do them. Well, right now I wish I could figure out how to find a man who doesn't exist. We've looked through lab results, Catelyn said, and the rush from the blown window and the blast from the grenade messed up the sniffer, so we don't even have the smell of this person. Well, not much at least, but we're pretty sure it was male. We have a little bit of the scent. He was likely using a masker or a puffer to mess up the sniffers to boot, but all we really have is Dr. Patil saying the name before she died. We don't know if she recognized him as breaking in, or if she just thought of him when someone else was about to kill her. The way she said it, the name is Clavery, seems to indicate she wanted Justin to remember that name and report it. And it was definitely a grenade? Ari asked. Yes, hand launcher, Catelyn said. They aren't big. They carry farther than a toss can do. Unskilled people can use them the same way they'd use handguns. Setting it off in a room wasn't really appropriate use for it. But it was probably on a few seconds delay. That's one advantage of a grenade. That would let the perpetrator get the door shut so he wouldn't get blown out too. Using the launcher in that smaller space says this was a novice, Florian said. Someone that was likely to make a mistake with the grenade, maybe freeze. The launcher, you just preset the delay you want and pull the trigger. It could have sent the grenade halfway to admin from there. In that little room, it probably stuck to the wall and then blew up. If it had hit the window, it would actually have done less damage. The door was shut by then. There was blast impact on its insides. The perpetrator was on his way out of there, if he wasn't blown out too. They tried sniffers outside the room, but he was probably using a puffer, and he was probably moving fast. They went ahead and took sniffer readings in every room on that floor and above and below, but they never found the launcher or the puffer, so that part was clever. Somebody probably took it from him. Maybe somebody else took over the puffer as they passed in the hall. That's the lab's theory. If he didn't land on a rooftop somewhere as yet undetected. Possibly the assassin was on building staff. I don't think they're going to find too much that's useful. A lot of things about this are very well organized. That could even mean they meant to give the impression of a novice, Catelyn said, and whoever was running it really wasn't. A grenade like that, it could have taken out the apartment downstairs. It didn't. The owner downstairs was very lucky, or the assassins knew the building design. Not nice all the same, Ari said. No, Florian said, not nice. And Paxers haven't been at all careful about collaterals. No rules. If it was Paxers, Catelyn said. Paxers had the motive, Ari said, if they thought Patil was betraying their interests or selling out to Resume. Paxers really don't like us. But you're right, there could be others. And where do you get grenades and launchers? Mostly from defense, Catelyn said, but there's pilferage, mostly at Novgorod docks, and things can be had. That needs fixing, she said. It's not easy to fix, Florian said, from what I hear. First is to make sure they're not hiring any Paxers dockside, Catelyn said. Which has happened. That would be top of the list, yes, Ari agreed. It was a wide, confusing world, unlike Rezeune. But there were slinks in both, and they hadn't found the one in their own halls, not yet. That there was one, potentially, the movement of the card indicated there was. Sirrah, Catelyn said, you have on file a list of all her contacts. Yes, largely defense and academics. Academics don't have access to grenade launchers, unless they are getting them from the Paxers. Defense is having elections, Florian said. That's a period of instability. Namely, Catelyn said. Sorry. Jacques and Sperlin backed Eversnow, but there's Khalid. I'd expect defense professionals to be more careful, Florian said, and a little line appeared between his brows. But the charge didn't penetrate the floor, just blew the pressure out. Does anyone live downstairs? Do we know that? And who are they? I did check about downstairs, Catelyn said. A single man, Shoji Corsa. He was out on emergency assignment with his company. This appears a coincidence. Coincidences have to be proven. He's an executive with Geotech. That company called him to Morrieville. His apartment wasn't damaged except a mirror broke. The building is being investigated for structural problems. Meanwhile, we're investigating via the ReseuneSec link, Florian said. We've kept our inquiry out of Hicks's awareness, Sirrah, except for that. We've done a little, just to keep up the appearance of using his system. Should we ask him directly? Ari shook her head. Not until we talk to Yanni. I imagine he's upset about Patil, but I'd like to know how upset he is. Have you sent Yanni and Hicks the transcripts? Yes, Florian said. Good. She'd ordered that, a gesture of goodwill. She was tired. It had been a long day with the computers. And she'd missed her lesson with Justin. Again. Her eyes were scratchy. Jordan had found out about Eversnow from somebody. And when she thought about things really hard, she got sleepy when she was in this state. That was ideas trying to find their way out of the maze. Regarding Justin. Regarding Paxers. Regarding 2 murders, one delicate, one a blunt force mess that might have destabilized an apartment tower. Let's just go to bed. Shall I leave, Sirrah? Catelyn asked. Leaving her and Florian alone, Catelyn meant, which would be good if she had any energy left, but she didn't. She just wanted comfort. And ideas wouldn't happen if there was sex, so it wasn't a good idea on that account either. Stay, she said. Her gown was thin, the room was chilled down for night on the Minders program, and those in their gym sweats were warm, long-time company. She made a place under the covers for all of them, and they got under, Florian in the middle, and tucked down together, the way they had before they'd ever discovered sex. She could let her mind go, then, and just think, and she did. If Patil had recognized Anton Clavery in the person who'd showed up with a grenade launcher, then she'd met him under that name. Novice, Florian and Catelyn had said. And that would seem to rule out anyone important or anybody military. Unless, Florian and Catelyn had said, it was someone trying to leave the scene looking like a novice. If Patil called out that name in the face of an armed man and her imminent death, she'd tried to send Justin a message regarding something she counted as a threat, or the source of threats. They, she'd said. A mysterious they had been watching her, scaring her, making her desperate enough to call Justin to try to get through to Jordan. And why Jordan? Why not ask him to go to Yanni? Jordan's name had been popularly attached to the dissidents. They'd campaigned to get him released. Thieu had been in favor of terraforming and against the forces that had stopped it, namely the first Ari, Gerard, Yanni, all that generation. Jordan said Thieu had regarded him with sympathy and courted him, believing he'd murdered Ari. It wasn't a sweet old man, was it? Thieu would have wanted her dead, likely. Thieu had wanted the planet terraformed, all the ankyloderms and platytheres dead, everything in the oceans, all done, and the first Ari hadn't. The first Ari had been a citizen of the planet, and Olga Emery hadn't influenced her enough. The first Ari had changed her mind and begun to protect it. Like Gehenna, wasn't it? This is your world. Had that had an emotional resonance for RE1 herself? Take care of it? Defend it? Protect it? It did with her. She wasn't losing what Saitine had grown up to have. She wasn't for losing what Saitine had grown up to have. She'd defended it. She'd defend it. And that would put her in the outs with Dr. Raymond Thieu, who'd been sure Jordan Warrick would take his side and admire his work and his intentions. Maybe that was over-romanticizing it. Maybe that was giving too much credit to Jordan because, bastard that he was, he hadn't liked the man's insistence. Jordan wasn't anybody's follower. He was nobody's disciple. Free thinker, yes. Argumentative son of a bitch, definitely. But not the sort that would sit in the shadows with anybody and connive and scheme. Just not in his makeup. Not in Justin's. In a certain measure, they had something in common, and damned sure when the first Ari intervened with Justin, it wasn't to make him capable of connivance and subterfuge. She couldn't think of anyone actually worse at it than Justin. And Justin wanted the world as it was. He wanted to save the native fauna. Jordan wasn't for destroying them so much as he was just for getting off the planet and going away and having all mankind living in space. Living a lot like the Alliance folk, in steel worlds, in ships. Maybe with a forest at the heart of Pell, but that was not something that was going to be Jordan's first project. He'd be trying to educate kids to be rational beings. That was what he used to do before he became so angry. He wasn't Clavery, that was for sure. But the two people they could reach who probably knew who that was were both dead. Clavery could be a non-person, or he could even be a hollow man, sort of non-person, someone who'd never really existed, who various people opted to be when they wanted to be somebody else. He could be a construct, a composite, even a foreigner, somebody from Alliance, somebody bent on mischief that could start the whole war again, and she didn't think that was the case. If Patil had recognized him in her doorway, she'd known who she attached that name to, and she'd wanted it known to Justin and Jordan as her last living act. She couldn't get through to Jordan, so she'd called Justin. Couldn't get through to Jordan. But that was the one she'd wanted. Couldn't get Thieu, so she wanted Jordan as if he should know, or as if he should be warned. Tell him about Anton Clavery? Thieu was dead, and that name was at issue, and Patil was terrified for her life? She'd gotten her message out. Not all of it. If she'd done a little less arguing with Justin and a little more saying what she had to say, the world would be safer. It had been a collected, sensible gesture, in extremity. That, at least, was admirable. The first Ari would have done that, if she'd had time. But, damn it, why had the woman had to feel her way with Justin and not just say it aloud? Whoever hadn't scrupled to kill two specials was a person they urgently needed to find and deal with. Yeah, no, that's what it says. Whoever hadn't scrupled to kill two specials was a person they urgently needed to find and deal with. And which specials were gone? Both in nanistics. Every special in nanistics. There were researchers and experts, but the brilliant people, the theorists, were gone. A bad trade for the universe, she could think. Whether she supported the project or not, they'd lost two geniuses in the same field. It slowed Eversnow way down. There was a problem for Yanni's program, wasn't it? Yanni had to move fast. and signed some people, replacing Patil, or his project was going to fall through. Deals Yanni had made with Corain and Jacques were now subject to review. She ought to be happy about that, but she'd promised Yanni not to oppose Yanni's objective. Maybe somebody thought they'd now gotten the better of Yanni and reduced his political power. Somebody might have second thoughts about that move if Yanni turned out not to be in charge, and if they suddenly saw they were dealing with someone who was going to be in authority for 100 years. But then, maybe it was the project itself that had stirred this kind of opposition. Maybe it was nudging somebody else's territory. And if someone thought getting rid of Patil and Thieu would stop Resuene from a project Resuene needed, well, Yanni needed to talk to her about what was going on, and it had to be very, very soon. Book 3, Section 2, Chapter 8. I'm getting interrupted. Give me a sec.
Alright, sorry about that. Juggling some eggs. Metaphorical eggs.
Not very tasty, they're not free range. Alright, where were we? Right. Book 3, Section 2, Chapter 8. June 14, 2424, 1802 hours. Another dinner with Yanni, and Yanni had protested this time. He'd claimed he was too busy, said he had far too many things to do, and she was impinging on the little relaxation he did get. Dear Yanni, she'd written back, urgent. Be here at 1800 hours. And he was. He did look tired. She showed him right into the dining room, and Hayes personally offered him a drink. "What are we eating?" he asked sensibly, and Hayes suggested an early start on the wine, a white, which Yanni agreed would be fine. So it was a Sauvignon Blanc for both of them. The first sip went down with a deep sigh, followed by a second. Yanni wasn't reckless in that regard, not like Jordan in the least. She had one sip, just one, and waited. "We have a new cook," she said. "I don't know what he's put together, but it should be good." "Thanks for the transcripts on the Patil case," he said, straight to business. "No problem," she said, and signaled Hayes. Could be Haze. I think I've had this question before. Let's go with Haze. "Who is doing the No problem," she said, and signaled Haze, who was doing the serving tonight, with Florian entertaining Frank in the conference room, and Catelyn on hold for her dinner, just quietly standing in the corner, silent as a statue. Haze brought the appetizers, bacon-wrapped shrimp, and Yanni's disappeared fast, without a comment. She gave a second signal, and salads arrived, delicate greens, with a light vinaigrette. That started going down too, as if Yanni were half-starved, and Yanni's wine was at a quarter of the glass left. "Yanni," she said, "you're worried about something." "I've got a lot of pieces trying to come unglued," Yanni said, and swallowed a bite. "Sorry, I'm just elsewhere this evening, I'm afraid." "Who's Anton Clavery?" "Not a pleasant dinner conversation," Yanni said. "But this is our window to have this conversation, unless you want to stay for drinks, and I know you're tired. Yanni, I need to know what's going on." "We don't know. Clavery's nobody. Literally nobody." "Non-person?" "Something like." "Did he kill Patil?" "Behind it, we're pretty sure. Not the hand on the trigger, necessarily, but—" "Why did he kill Patil?" "Because—" Another bite went down, chased by the rest of the wine. "Because Patil was coming over to science, or because certain people know about Eversnow and shouldn't, and that blew up before it ever got to public knowledge." "Jordan?" Last bite. She pressed a silent signal, and Haze came in and removed the plates, while Yanni had to think about that question. Haze refilled Yanni's wine glass. Yanni let it sit. "Jordan knew about Eversnow," she said. "He said he did. I gave you that transcript, too. Did you lie to me, Yanni? I thought you were honest. But maybe you're just good." Yanni nodded. "When I have to be. Yes, I told him about it. He didn't approve. He hit the ceiling, in fact." "In your office before you left, that was what the fight was really about." "Young Sarah, you know quite a lot." "It was pretty famous, Uncle Yanni. You weren't very quiet. And Jordan is news. So, yes, I heard there was a fight. So did everybody in admin and ed. Why did you tell him?" Long silence. And Haze wasn't going to come back until signaled. "We're the same generation," Yanni said. "Old associates. I know the way he thinks. He was in on the project at the beginning. I didn't want him to find out later and blow up or go behind my back. I wanted to control how he learned and what he thought and know what his movements were once he knew. And I pretty well got the reaction I thought I'd get, so Jordan didn't surprise me in that respect. He doesn't like it. He said he'd had enough of Thieu, and I was crazy, and terraforming anything was a good way to get biologicals loose we just won't like. Old argument with Jordan. I said he didn't like planets on principle, and he said they were good for studying, but he'd rather not live there if he had any choice. And he asked me about his transfer to Fraggoth, old topic, which I told him was dead. Totally dead. He's not going anywhere in the foreseeable future. He shouted. I shouted. He called me a damned fool. We weren't on record. "Somebody slipped that card into his pocket, and it turned up," he says, "the night that you got back from Novgorod, from all this dealing. You didn't do that, did you?" "No." "Can I believe that? Did anybody working for you do it? Do I have to pare it down until something finally fits?" "I have no idea where that came from, or, more to the point, how whoever did it knew Jordan knew. If they knew Jordan knew. It's a damned maze, and it wasn't my doing." "He's connected to Thieu. Thieu didn't know about Eversnow, or did he? Thieu did know something because we made a request for his Eversnow notes back when we set this up. Thieu had notes on Eversnow in his files? He doesn't now. Didn't. We borrowed them and didn't return them. But yes, he was doing some work on that once upon a time. Defense had used his work in their little version of the Eversnow project. We'd studied it. It's foundational to what we propose to do next. Hell, Yanni, that's a little oversight in informing me. It's a worrisome piece of information to leave out, I agree. Doubly so now. I don't suppose Patil phoned Thieu to advise him when she got the appointment. I don't suppose she said the word Eversnow. He didn't get a phone call. He did get the advisement back in April that she'd taken a job at ReseuneSpace on Fraggoth. She sent him a message to that effect. He was not mentally what he had been, but possibly he did put two and two together. Possibly he knew very well what she was doing, a nanistic special on the farthest station outward next to Eversnow, where he would have gone if they'd gone ahead with his program. And before that, he was bedeviling Jordan to contact her. Contact her. As if Jordan could. But we have just a slight clue what he wanted Jordan to find out, don't we? If you gave Patil his notes, don't you think that explains just a little bit? He had no warning at all that Jordan was actually going to get out of Planis. But he knew Jordan had contacts inside Resuene, that he has a son here. And you just lifted his files and sent them where he couldn't get them, so small wonder he was a little agitated. How long ago? During Dennis's tenure, late last year. The man was a special. It was his life's work. His stuff was disappearing. They were never going to run his work on Cytine. He knew that better than anybody. If he'd managed the remediation program... Oh, that's a comma in the middle of that, not a period. He knew that better than anybody, if he'd managed the remediation program. And there's the military nanistics program. He worked on that during the war, didn't he? Yes. And he worked on Eversnow. You snatched his files, and he knew the only planet we own where it's remotely appropriate to use the terraforming data is Eversnow. I'm going to repeat that because my brain lost track of that. I might have said it correctly. And he worked on Eversnow, you snatched his files, and he knew the only planet we own where it's remotely appropriate to use the terraforming data is Eversnow. And Patil was moving to Fraggoth, right next door. He was in reju failure. The notes were classified. It was perfectly logical we'd take them in his retirement. We don't know how much of all that he put together. The reju failure was progressing fast. We're talking about a few months here. Does Patil have them in her possession? Were they possibly in her apartment? Yanni shook his head. No. They were sent on to Fraggoth. Copies were. She didn't have them yet. She let go a short breath. Thank God for that. She didn't have them, and they're in a military courier's black box en route. Nobody can get at them but someone with the key card. It didn't make her feel that much better. So Defense has them. Can't access them, not unless they've messed with the black boxes themselves. Don't even talk about getting into those. Elections, the stock market, public records. There's deeper security on that system than anything else we've got. It'll feed into Fraggoth Central, totally robotic, and it has a gate restriction on it. It won't feed out again until someone arrives there with a password. That's the way it works. Those notes will be sealed until someone authorized shows up there. What password? Do you know it? Or who does know it? I won't tell you here. I know it. I hadn't even told Patil. I will tell you. Do. Please. That's too thin a thread, Yanni. There's security, but that's way too thin a thread. Catelyn. Sarah. Paper. Catelyn went to a sideboard, got a single sheet of paper and a pen, and gave them to Yanni. He wrote, and Catelyn carried it to her. Alphanumeric, long, and without mnemonics evident. GIIW202800882Y2. Then 28912HW. And W\18. Sorry, that's a /. W/18. She tucked that paper into her décolletage. "Ash before midnight," she said. "Thank you, Yanni." A nod of his head. Catelyn had resumed her place. Likely had already memorized it in the one glance she'd gotten. Catelyn was good at that. "So do we have a copy here at Resuene?" she asked. "It's there," he said. "Filed in your archive." She had to be amused. They hadn't turned it up by accident. It wasn't part of the ordinary library archive, nor security's ordinary file, not out there. "What else have you stored in my files?" "Just things your successor might need. Or you might. Someday." "Clever." Yanni gave a little nod, sipped his wine. "Thank you. You're right. Somebody might have assumed she had them, but they didn't stay to search the apartment, so they didn't think they were there. They might try to hack her access." "Or Thieu's. Thieu's is the place I'd expect them to go after." "And he was dying. But it was a good idea to get those files entirely out of there. Beyond an erase. They're gone from storage at Planis." "And they're here, under my name, and in that ship, outbound. The only copies in the universe." "The only copies." "Nothing at Beta."
"Nothing at Beta. At least on our side of the wall. If Defense has a copy, we can't find that."
"So Thieu wants to know what's going on with his files. The man may have been going downhill fast, but he wasn't stupid." Jordan, meanwhile, didn't want to get involved in his scheme.
"Jordan was involved in another information flow," Yanni said. "A man named McCabe."
"Airport maintenance, Gerard told me. A middleman in contact between Councillor Corraine and Jordan."
"A two-way conduit of information. We detained him, of course we did, but we don't know if he's the only one." "A leak to and from Novgorod? Absolutely there was. There may have been others. It's possible Thieu didn't need his mental faculties about him to know Patil was going to Eversnow, if Corraine's contact man wasn't the only font of information in Planis. The fact that the news hasn't broken in wider Paxer circles yet indicates if there is a flow of information we haven't already stopped, it's tightly controlled and it's being careful. We're watching that possibility carefully, feeding a little disinformation to see where it turns up. It was one reason I wanted to break that news to Jordan and watch his reaction. I was running truthers. The surprise seemed real, so he didn't get all the information from Corraine's man. The surprise seemed real, so he didn't get the information from Corraine's man. But what goes on in Corraine's office? Who knows where they have contacts? You don't blow a good spy for some minor piece of news. You let him sit and wait until there's something worth his being there. And so far, nobody's breached security in Corraine's office. Until, possibly, now. Somebody took out our plans for Eversnow in one day."
Finally, she had the notion Yanni was leveling with her. "So," she said, "Thieu wanted to get to Patil, who's the logical recipient of those notes you took from him, one of the only people, maybe, who really understand them."
Understand, there was absolutely nothing illegal in what we did. It's classified material, the man was going downhill medically, we had to protect it. The military sits right there next to Planis with the capability to protect and defend military interests. They could be across that gap in 15 minutes flat.
"Eversnow is still their project." Thieu was working for them, but physically inside Planis Labs, and they didn't have those notes.
Eversnow is still their that was what she just said. He'd been working with them, still corresponding with them quite extensively. We don't have the content of many of those letters. They dropped into the great black hole of defense communications. We assume they don't have his last notes. If they have their own copy, we don't know. Can't know.
Didn't his notes go to them if he was working for them?
His work is proprietary to Resuene. They wanted something done, they got the result, not the research. We have his side of the exchange with them, not their answers.
"Will Jacques talk?" she asked.
I may make headway with Sperlin on that front, assuming the election goes his way. Meanwhile, before the election results, I want the project staffed. I have to replace Patil.
If Khalid should get into office.
Exactly. I'm going to be raiding other Nanistics people out of Beta, where Defense is going to be mildly unhappy with me. I'm going to hire people away from their programs.
So you're going full speed ahead, but we're running out of Nanistic specials.
We're out of specials. I do have 5 candidates for the Eversnow directorship, backup in case Patil had said no, top of her list of her own choices to go to Fraggoth. I'm going ahead with the project, all out. Be advised of that.
I think we pretty well have to, don't we? She said, because that really was where her thoughts were tending now. We need to find out what's going on. Not to let our enemies win this. I wasn't for it, but somebody who doesn't like us is against it. I'm going to wait a sec for that to end. That's quieted down enough.
I'm glad you take that position.
Yanni said, looking tired. He'd resisted the wine beyond a sip or two. He picked it up, looked at it, looked at her.
If I drink this and get indiscreet, are you going to be a priss about it?
I'm not, she said. Never will be. But answer me first, Uncle Yanni. I really, really love you, and so I want you to tell me the absolutely honest truth in this. Maybe Jordan's lying to everybody. Maybe he brought that card with him from Thieu for his own reasons. Do you have any inkling if that's the case?
I just think he knows more than he's saying.
That was a disappointment. She wanted more out of Yanni. She pressed her lips together and waited.
Yanni said, "You really shouldn't try to run Resume yet, you know."
Shift of direction. She saw it. She still tracked. What makes you think about that?
Because you're getting very sharp, very fast, and you've gathered a small army.
Yanni, somebody bugged my new staff, and I'm pretty sure who, and probably you are. I didn't like that.
It wasn't me,
he said. Hicks, then, she said, independently. I may eventually forgive him for it, but he did it, and he pretty certainly knew he did it. I'm on to it, and I've fixed the problem. Don't mention it to him, though. I'm trusting you to know about it and keep quiet. For your own protection. My people are dangerous to people who'd try to do things like that.
You remind me of your predecessor.
Did you like her?
Odd question.
Did you like her, Yanni?
I did, actually. She was what she was, and she did good in her life, on the average. And let me say right now, that if you want me to step down tonight, I will, but I hope you'll reconsider a move like that.
Why?
Because, for one thing, we can get quite a bit of yardage for Resune's programs if we don't let Corain know you're coming into power sooner than most people think. And I think you are. They'll deal right now because they're scared to death of you. Corain is shocked by what happened to Patil, but he's still on board with the Eversnow deal. So are the others. Secondly, we haven't seen the outcome in the defense election, and maintaining a bit of our flexibility in the face of that outcome is a good thing. Polls have been wrong before.
And meanwhile, there's somebody running around Resume leaving cards from somebody who's supposed to be under strictest security weeks before she was murdered? And it had Planis markers, Yanni. What's the theory on that, officially?
Authenticity, Yanni said with a shrug. Whoever did it wanted it to smell like Planis, as authentic as possible, and whoever did it went to a small bit of trouble to do that. Probably to rattle the walls and see if they could provoke some action. Or maybe it's real and Jordan lied. Maybe an old man with a failing memory and a few weeks to live really wanted some personal acknowledgement from somebody to take over his life's work. It's Planis paper. It may have been printed almost anywhere but on Resume office machinery. There's that security feature. Micro ID in the typeface, if your security hasn't told you. which still leaves, as a source, the town, various neighboring towns, and passing river craft, not to mention the airport. The card has all kinds of issues attached, no finger traces of any kind except the people that we well know handled it. Super clean.
So it was real. Or it was somebody knew about the markers and knew to be careful about the microprint. Did you search Jordan's apartment?
While he was at supper with you, yes, we did. Found nothing, of course.
Did you tell him you searched it?
No. No, nor left any traces he could find, if Hicks was entirely up to his job.
Yanni, I want you to back off Jordan. Don't make him mad. Give him work to do. Real work.
There's a small problem with that.
A pose, a quizzical tilt of the head. You mean you don't trust him?
I trust he'll do something. He'll sabotage something just to make us find it. And we're busy.
Send the results to me. It's good exercise. I'll check them.
You have enough to do yourself. Just keep going with your lessons.
Do it, Yanni.
He'll burst a blood vessel.
Probably, but I'll check what he does. Who's Clavery?
Yanni blinked, then shrugged. Clavery is a name not in the computers. Ergo, a non-person, a construct, a code word, or an alias.
Possibly someone she knew by sight.
We're running checks on everybody who was ever in contact with her, but just occasionally, in Novgorod, there are places where you aren't being logged, and people can make contact off the record. Restrooms, subways, standing on a street, at the theater. If she was ever accosted by somebody named Clavery, it wouldn't be in her apartment building, not until that night.
A hollow man?
Yanni drew a deep breath and gazed at her directly. I'm not even asking where you learned that term. Myself, I'm strongly betting on Paxer involvement in the murders, but I'm not 100% certain.
I'm worried about people running around the halls of Resume putting cards in people's pockets, and no camera caught them either.
We're working on it. Just say we're working on it. Jordan favors very crowded, dark little restaurants where the chairs are jammed up together and people are moving all over the place. We don't have good imaging. Right now, we're investigating a lot of people.
Jordan's a magnet for blame. You never thought Jordan killed the first Ari, did you?
Yanni shook his head. Took a drink of wine. For one thing, he was in the hall when the electronics went out, and the system was very selective with what went dead at that point. Are we going to starve?
Sorry. She silently cued Haze and said, Yanni, will you support me if I do take over?
I'd support you, yes.
What if I'd asked you to drop the Eversnow project? Would you do that?
I wouldn't be at all happy about it.
But would you do it if I asked?
Actually, Yanni said, I'd probably go full ahead until the hour you nuked my accesses, because I believe in it. And I think you'd be quite wrong. So I'd fight you on that.
Good. I like it when somebody tells me the truth. Why do you think I'm wrong?
Because Eversnow solves the employment problem on Fraggoth.
Doesn't help Panperi at all.
It still solves one critical unemployment problem and makes Panperi less critical. No, it doesn't help Panperi, and they'll be mad about it, and we'll have to find something to give them pretty fast.
Not on this year's budget.
We'll let Panperi stew and protest and get jealous of Fraggoth, and then we'll agree to do something. That makes it evident we're listening.
You're a total cynic.
He shrugged. Works. We've got worse potential problems on the horizon. We've got an important alliance on this bill. Us, citizens, defense. We can get information and trade in on it, and that's our majority. But defense is in mid-election, and Corrain's getting old. He could see himself challenged for the seat in Citizens, and believe me, a lot worse could come out of that huge electorate than Corrain. It's diverse. It may be true that if there hadn't been a Corrain to hold Citizens together, we'd have to invent one, but in any given year, we could see something nasty develop there. Another reason to pursue a major population burst at Fraggoth. Population in an area farthest removed from Alliance space. Most of them will end up voting in Citizens, supporting, we hope, moderates like Corrain.
All right, let's discuss it. You think that Eversnow is still an asset. I frankly see it having serious problems.
I think it's a safety factor. If there's another war, Alliance will think twice. If we toss their merchanters out of that route, we can enforce a ban and we can protect it. It's a very narrow corridor.
No great abundance of jump points in the region?
Scarce. Just about what we're developing as destinations, places we'll be able to defend. That's the word from defense.
That was certainly a point in favor. How soon is your population burst at Fraggoth?
All right. This is getting to be in your need to know one more reason why it's not good for you and me to have a contest for power this year. There's a station on World already. That's all military and classified to the hilt. It's been black budgeted for decades, since your predecessor's time. We've kept its secrecy because we use its facilities pretty freely, but there have been some issues over the years, too.
That's how you got the samples. It wasn't a robot. You lied on that, too.
Well, it was a robot, but we have people down there as we speak. Very cold, very lonely people in company with a lot of cold, lonely defense people, and not an Azzy with the lot. And not an Azzy in the... Excuse me. Tripping over my own town. Well, it was a robot, but we have people down there as we speak. Very cold, very lonely people in company with a lot of cold, lonely defense people, and not an Azzy in the lot. Defense has been damned worried we'd tamper, so they haven't allowed Dazzy down there. Just a nice little born man society.
What are we, for God's sake? At war?
During the war, it was a lot friendlier. Lately, it's gotten political and full of rules and restrictions. The restrictions on our information gathering and on our flow of personnel to and from is one motive on our part. We very much need a Resuene presence down there, an expanding presence in our own facility before the whole planet becomes a military zone where they make the rules.
Hence Patil's project. Hence this whole thing. Patil's an excuse. Terraforming never was it. It's the population burst. It's a colony, never mind what the rest of the planet is like. They can sit on an ice ball. Terraforming's just what you're paying to enlist Corrain's people.
Well, not altogether, Yanni said, because ultimately we want that planet. We want to colonize freely there, and we don't want defense controlling that real estate. Terraforming's the excuse we use to get a base of our own down there. Right now, defense has themselves a nice 1,000-kilometer wide saltwater puddle they're using Beta Labs Nanistics people to work with, long distance, which is no way to run a laboratory. We need to be self-sufficient down there. We need to be on site and in charge of anything genetic. We're going to need integrations on foundational sets for Eversnow residency and some CIT volunteers pretty quick. We have that in part. We have the orbiting station, and the military has the on-world base, which gives us the capability to land, and it's kept them moderately cooperative, because they need us for supply, rather than them having to build their own station. But right now, we only have the kernel of a star station in orbit. It needs to grow. Fast. It needs the on-world lab. We keep the military from owning the whole planet, we boot them entirely out of Nanistics research, and Union gets a highway to new stars. I've needed you, young lady. I've desperately needed you to get up to speed on integrations. We need Azzy that can face down military CITs and say, "No, sir, that's Resuene territory. Keep out."
You're doubling the size of Union. You're handing us problems we don't even imagine yet.
It's not me that's running that on-world presence. Not at the moment. The Elder Ari died at an inconvenient time, and I couldn't get Gerard to move faster. Not to mention, you ate up a lot of budget, young lady. Your new wing, hell, your budding townships, nothing against what you've already cost Resuene in lab time, in research, setup. But we've done our Eversnow research in budget masked behind the Fargon lab we already have. We've surveyed stars down that strand. There's no likelihood of sapience down that route unless it comes a long way to meet us. Several planeted stars. Resources. Jobs. Habitat. New genetics, at least at Eversnow. Not likely much at the gas balls and ice moons we'll be dealing with further along. A lot of advantages. And as you say, Prime opportunity for a major population burst that would solve several problems, including the citizens' electorate, within the next 2 to 3 decades. That could be of incalculable value. Look, I'm sorry for what I caused. Don't be. But I'm going to argue with you. I'm looking at the population dynamic that results from this project, not just down that route, but all over Union. I'm looking at Cytene and our own home territory becoming a stagnant backwater in a few hundred years, if Eversnow works. Because if it does, the center of gravity of all of Union shifts considerably. Political interests, population dynamics, everything goes out there to what we call the edge of space right now. And if it doesn't work, we'll have spent a bigger budget than I ever was, ending up with no viable planet out there, just one more star station, and 2 and 3 times the population sitting out at Fargon with no jobs, while Panpari falls apart out on an unused route and hates us, maybe for nothing. It's going to work. Even at the rate we're going, Eversnow is about 20 years from a tip-over point, after which the melt accelerates and goes on its own. You'll know it in your lifetime. I'm not done, Yanni. I'm also looking at a future in which we lose touch with Alliance if we shift our center toward Fargon. We're at a point where we stand a small chance of making a lasting peace. Alliance has already gone poking off in another direction themselves, and they've proven that's dangerous. But once Alliance finds out we're expanding in another direction, what are they going to do to expand but either start putting enclaves on down below or throwing some colonial effort onto Gehenna, which is their one usable planet with one hell of a local problem? Or they accelerate their push into the Hinder stars and get closer to Earth. Not to mention Eversnow moves our center away from the border we share with the Alliance, and that lets them take the star stations we used to own. Not very profitable ones, except Mariner. I'm afraid I'm not an optimist about the peace with the Alliance lasting through your tenure. I am. I think we can keep the peace if we're sensible and get control of our own people bombing subways and talk to Alliance with some kind of notion how our own politics are going to run for 10 years consecutive. You talk about integrations out there. I'm worried about integrations here. We have a disease in our own heart, Yanni. We have a serious problem in the Novgorod population, and I'm pretty sure it's not an Azzy problem. It's probably come down from the station, and I think it's serious. I think it's serious enough that before we start any future population burst of the size you describe, we need to know why we have Paxers and what drives them. Is it the Azzy CIT mix, or is there something about us? Yanni was silent a moment, thinking about that, and at that moment Haze and Hiro carried dinner in, briskly served. It was chicken with herbs, in a delicate pastry crust, and it smelled good. "Eat," she said. "It's Cook's first formal dinner. They probably went crazy back there keeping it ready to serve. Don't let it go to waste." He had a bite. "It's good. This is really good." Ari looked at Haze and Hiro. "Tell Wyndham so. It really is." "Thank you, Sir Sarah," Haze said, pleased, and quietly departed, and the door shut. 2 bites later. "I can take over admin," she said, "when I want to. Don't think Base 2 can ever overpower Base 1. It just won't happen. That's not a threat, Yanni. It's a warning. Please don't try me. Convince me. I'm willing to listen to your plans. I am listening." "You find out things already, don't you?" Yanni asked. "You get what you want. You didn't need my clearance. You're as deep into the information as you want to be." She lifted a shoulder and had a bite. To get information, sometimes you had to give away a real piece on your side. "Generally," she said, and swallowed, and laid down her knife and fork and looked at him. "Yanni, please don't be against me. I don't want to be against you." "I won't cede you Eversnow. I'll fight you for that. On everything else, I'm with you. But for that, because I believe in it, and because I'm right, and I believe I'm right, I'll fight you." She considered that a moment, on 2 bites of dinner, then nodded. "All right, Yanni," she said, finally. "I think you're making me a lot of trouble long term, but I'll think hard about what you're saying.
I did promise, and you'll get your on-world base, and I'll work your integrations. I'm not up to what you want now, and you're right. I don't know enough to argue. But I'll be there, and I'll back your project until I have a clear reason not to. I promise you. If I have to set my successor on the case, it will run, and we'll take care of those people. But I want you to know I'm worried. My predecessor was murdered. We have people in Rezeune we can't trust. We have a lot of people in Novgorod who aren't behaving rationally. You can argue it's rational from their point of view, but not in the macro-setted view. Macro sets in that population aren't working the way they're supposed to. People aren't as happy as they're supposed to be for no damned reason I can figure.
I'm not sure those people will ever be happy. The planet isn't what their parents were promised it was going to be. They were all going to be rich. It wasn't going to take them a great deal of education to succeed. Now it is. That's just pure human nature, Ari, nothing too arcane.
That was a point. She thought about it. So it is more work than some people want. But that's not all that's going on. Those people who are persuading other people to build bombs, you can always find somebody out of sorts and desperate. People get themselves into mental messes. But the Paxers are out creating more unhappy people as a matter of policy, because they want power, and they're getting recruits because they're either tapping into some flaw in the macro sets, which is possible. But I have a theory that upsets me more than that.
What?
Maybe they're using Rezeune techniques to get the recruits they want. Maybe they're doing things we don't know about.
The Paxers?
Look, we created the science, the military went off on their own tangent thinking they could use it, and we ended up with some space cases and some real dangerous people. The first Ari's book got published, and all of a sudden we had people trying to run interventions on each other in their living rooms. It's serious, Yanni. Don't laugh. What we do is power, and power is what people want. The people operating in their living rooms, they're fools, especially if they do it under therapeutic cat. But remember what the first Ari said about ordinary people understanding Einstein in this age, and someday they'd understand Bach. A bite stayed poised on Yanni's fork.
Meaning we've got a society that thinks they understand what we do.
I think Ari's book wasn't exactly a trigger. It just warned us that we needed to look at how much people believe they really do understand what we do. Power comes from doing what we do, and maybe there have been a few people who are smart enough, but not smart enough, if you get what I mean. Ari 1 and her mother both designed Aussie sets that worked around that CIT footprint, but what if a handful of CITs have been freelancing for the past few decades and bringing up bent kids? Look at Gerard and Dennis's mother. Look at Olga Emery herself, the things she did to my predecessor. There wasn't a method back then. There was just this viral idea floating around society that if there was a hyper-efficient way to educate Azzy, there could also be some process to make a bright CIT kid a genius. And if some people ran the wrong intervention on the wrong kid, they could create what Dennis called me.
What's that?
A monster, she said. A real monster.
You have a hell of an imagination,
Yanni said. I'm serious, Yanni. Novgorod's lag-timed by Rejuve and birth labs. If they store the gene sets, people can have kids into their 80s and 100s with birth labs. And the time the Paxers start blowing things up is during my predecessor's lifetime. That's 3rd gen. That's where the problems usually come out in a bad set.
That also happened to coincide with the war they were protesting.
True, but there's no war now, and they're still protesting. They're not real clear what they're protesting, except the planet isn't what they want it to be, and they clearly think they can dispense with us.
Nothing psychotic about that. Humanity did without us for thousands of years. Alliance and Earth somehow still do.
That's not it, though. It's not that they can do without us, it's that somebody wants to be us. What if that's the viral idea, Yanni? That somebody's always going to be us, and that's where the power is situated, and maybe somebody's little kid, or several people's little kids, were turned into something that's angrier about us than the parents were. Maybe that's why they're still protesting a war that's been over for decades, and why it's only gotten worse and crazier. I mean, the first Paxers blew up buildings at odd hours when people weren't likely to be there, and now they're just trying to cause the worst casualties they can. It's accelerated. They're sucking in mental cases their violence created and giving them bombs and sending them out. But you don't think the leaders of this movement are ever going to carry the bombs. They'll sit back pretending to be us, congratulating themselves that they've become us.
So do you see a fix, short of mass mind wipe of every CIT in Novgorod?
I see Paxers proliferating like crazy once Eversnow goes public. That worries me, Yanni.
Why would they proliferate?
Because it's change. Because it scares the followers. Because change changes the balance of power, and that's going to agitate their leaders. Some people won't want the whole terraforming question shunted out to the edge of space. They want it here. Some people won't want it anywhere. Some people will agree with me that it's too much too soon. It's going to be like yeast in a bowl. It's just going to froth up and make a hell of a mess.
In your theory, you could change the national polling hours and they'd bomb subways over it.
They probably would, Ari said. It would all become some Resume plot.
So there's a monster in the walls. What's his name? Anton Clavery?
You're making fun of me.
Not exactly. Your theory would say the Paxers took out Patil and Thieu. The one's easy, but the other hard. The one's easy, the other's hard. You need sane people to get into Planus and then go insane.
She shook her head. You need a killer. Money's a motive, too. When you need something delicate done, you hire an expert. Yanni sat and thought about that a moment.
Nasty theory, young lady.
It's scary. So's your Eversnow, but I said I'd support it. You know what else worries me in this whole issue? Jordan worries me.
Regarding the Paxers?
He's an issue with them. If he's as self-interested as you say, he'll do whatever benefits him. He's the embodiment of the disaffected, the third-gen problem. You can't make him care. And he doesn't.
Interesting analysis.
Am I right?
Jordan's an old issue with the Paxers. They think they'd like to see him out in public. They think he'd blast Resume in the media if he gets his chance, and they'd really love that. He doesn't personally give a rat's ass whether we terraform or don't. And if you want somebody who's got the skill to be a real operator, your bogeyman in the CIT sector, that's Jordan. But, Yanni said, there's one thing against it. Jordan is entirely for himself. He'd fry the Paxers quicker than he'd fry Resume. Stupid people bother him. He'd turn on them in a heartbeat the moment they cross him.
And he designs Azzy sets.
Damned good ones, he said.
So have you ever worried what he put into them? She asked. Back when he was working and mad at Ari? I say it's probably CITs that are the cause. But we had the war. We had the military running interventions on their own Azzy, who later decommissioned and went civilian, a lot of them in Novgorod. And we had Jordan designing Azzy sets for decades and decades. I don't think he could have gotten anything past my predecessor, but that may just be my own ego. We never had the handle on military sets I wish we had.
We had people blowing up subways 40 years ago, Yanni said, well before Jordan became the ass he is.
Was there ever a point he wasn't one?
You want the truth? He said he was in love with your predecessor, Yanni said. I don't think he really was, but he may have thought he was, for a complex of reasons involving power, and he was certainly less of an ass before that major blow-up.
That was interesting. So he lied to her. He was interested in romance and power, and she was interested in her projects?
I don't think she cared about the sex. It was his mind she wanted. I think he lied to himself for one of the rare times in his life. Major self-delusion wrapped up in his self-concept. He was sleeping with Paul while that affair was going on. I told him it wouldn't work. He told me to go to hell. A year later, he had Justin conceived, born the year after. The Ari affair was on again, off again. They were trying to work together. He suddenly got the notion she was taking his ideas. Sharing didn't work with either of them. That's where it blew up. What happened in the bedroom, I don't know. but the ideas were the issue he complained about.
I can imagine that, she said. He's very self-protective in that regard.
So, Yanni said, somewhat cheerfully, it all blew up. I don't think Jordan's the godfather of the Paxers, not even the model of them. He may have done a few designs that could be problematic in Ari's integrations. You could be right about that. She tossed certain of them out and wouldn't let them go to implementation. There was a hell of a fight about it. He called her a goddess bitch, and she said he was a damned lunatic. They traded those words back and forth and had one shouting fight right in admin offices in front of the secretaries and the visitors. I don't think they slept together after that.
She had to laugh ruefully for a microsecond, and grew sad after, thinking about herself and Justin, and swearing to herself it never would happen to them that way. What did Paul think about it? Yanni looked at the door, as if measuring the distance to the conference room, and said, quietly,
Poor Paul. Always poor Paul. Paul puts up with him. That's got to be a ferociously strong mindset, Paul's. God knows Jordan's tinkered with it over the years. But Paul loves him.
That's what Paul gets out of it, at least. Did the first Ari ever try to do anything with him?
Yanni shook his head emphatically. No, that would have really torn it worse than what she did with Justin. Paul's where Jordan lives, that's all. Justin just happened one year, a project that ran for a couple of decades and blew up when Ari intervened. Became a permanent reminder of a quarrel he'd had with Ari. That's one way to look at it on Jordan's scale of things.
That's sad, too. Justin loves him.
A lot of people have tried, Yanni said with a second shake of his head. God knows. If you have an altruistic bent, young lady, take it from me on this one. Don't try kindness, not with him. He's just what he is. Let him be.
I wish I could get him all the same, she said, and set to work at the dish again. Yanni, Uncle Yanni, you keep being director for a while. I'll wait. Just don't you be my Jordan, and let's be friends. I'll respect your opinion, you respect mine, and don't hold out on me any more.
I'll take a good deep look at your theory on Novgorod, he said.
Good, she said. I'll be interested.
Eversnow, he said, stays.
Through anything I can foresee at the moment, she said, wishing otherwise, but it was necessary right now. So was keeping her word, if she didn't want to make honest people mad at her. And she had always thought Yanni was honest. I'll really try to make it work, Yanni. She signaled for the next course. Janny had made a really beautiful dessert, showing off, she was sure. It was layered, and oh, so good. Yanni ate his and ended up being persuaded to another half slice, and a little glass of liqueur to top the evening off. She couldn't eat another bite. Her stomach was a little upset by the time she saw Yanni to the door. But it hadn't gone badly. But it hadn't gone that badly. Yanni said he still trusted Hicks. That was a problem. She didn't anymore, not until Hicks really proved himself. She could take Hicks out, put someone she really trusted into that post, like Amy Carnath. Amy had the brains, and she'd be fair. But she'd absolutely hate running ReseuneSec. Besides, she was only 18, same as the rest of them, and that was the problem. In a post like Hicks's, history mattered. Yanni knew all sorts of things, just a long, long memory, and so did Hicks, and you didn't just replace a memory like that with a new appointment and hope to have anything like the prior performance in a job involving information. She could take admin herself and put Yanni into Hicks's job, but he'd really hate that, and that wouldn't improve matters. So they were stuck, temporarily, with Hicks. The good part was, so far, she still had Yanni. They could work with each other, until things had to be different. Book 3, Section 2, Chapter 9. June 17, 2424. 10:08 hours. "Hello," Ari said, opening the door to Justin's office, and he spun his chair around. Grant turned more slowly. She came in slowly. She came in solo. They had gotten the extra chair, which they used in her lessons, since they'd folded the other Wing 1 office into this one, and she turned it around and sat down, primly proper. "Coffee, Sarah?" Grant asked. "Please. Thank you. I need to talk to both of you." "Is there a problem?" Justin asked. "Yes and no." She waited until Grant had handed her a cup of coffee in a pretty gilt mug, and just held it in her lap, not to delay or draw this out. "The sets you did that I snatched back. Thank you for that. I came to tell you were right. There was a problem." "Which set?" "The one you delayed on." Justin gave out a long, long breath. "That set was tampered with," she said. "I think I've fixed it. I'm sure I've fixed it. Sure enough to have him in charge of my own guard." "That's very sure," Justin said. "His name is Raphael," she said, "and now he's under my orders. I think he was under Hicks's, and I think Gerard's before that." "He's too young," Grant said. "He is, but he's not the first of his number. I think there was some off-record done with his whole type. No, I don't just think. I know. There was. I'm quitting being the kid as of this week." Zap. "I didn't get that out of it," Justin said, frowning, so her bow shot had gone right past him. "I should have. I assumed. Never assume. You certainly beat me on this one." She shrugged lightly. "I had a head start. I know Green Barracks programming." With a shift of her glance toward the hall where Catelyn waited. "And you wouldn't have that experience. Still, you had something spotted. That's what warned me to look twice. You had your finger pretty well on it." And, of course, I'm getting called away again. Give me a minute. Sorry about that. That should be the last interruption for today. If it isn't, I'll cry. Where did we go? Okay, she shrugged lightly. "I had a head start. I know Green Barracks programming." With a shift of her glance toward the hall where Catelyn waited. "And you wouldn't have that experience. Still, you had something spotted. That's what warned me about it. That's what warned me to look twice. You had your finger pretty well on it." "What did it do?" He conflicted like hell when I took the contract. He had a nice little reservation built in, and I blitzed it. Not as good as an axe code, but what I... Not as good as an axe code, what I did, but close. Grant made a face. Grant knew. Anyway, she said, you deserved to know. Thanks, Justin said. I have it set up with Yanni. Jordan will get to work. I'll check. Oh, Jordan will get to work. He will get to work. He won't get to it. He will get to. He will be permitted to work. I have it set up with Yanni. Jordan will get to work. I'll check. If he blows up, maybe he and I will eventually have to talk about it. But we'll just see how it goes. Let him calm down first. Thank you, Justin said. You're still bothered about that BR set. It bothers me that I missed it. It bothers you. That's why you're good. Besides being special level smart. He laughed silently at that. Didn't say a thing. But self-doubt was major in him. I'm sorry I've missed lessons lately, she said. I think you're getting beyond them, aren't you? I don't think you're at all through teaching me. I learn all sorts of things. You were spotting that conflict from the microset side of things. I was looking at the large picture, and I fixed it by yanking at the deep sets. You're kind, is what? Grant knows what I mean. Sarai's right, Grant said quietly. It's why you want to rehabilitate your father. You're just soft-hearted. I need somebody who teaches me what soft-hearted is. I don't know that it's so valuable a commodity these days. Because Resuene isn't safe? She asked. It isn't. Neither is Planis. Neither is here. Granted, Jordan got that card in the way he'd... Granted, neither is here. Granted, Jordan got that card the way he says he did. We could have a problem at Planis that we never spotted. We could here. Something like a Raphael type. Nothing of his gene set is there. One is in Hicks's office, probably with nobody to report to now that Gerard is dead, but I'm going to put a tag on him. I'll know every contact he has. Ari, he said, and cast a look up at the overhead. For some reason, the head portion of overhead, which is all one word, head is italicized. Don't really know why. Ari, he said, and cast a look up at the overhead. She smiled sadly. It's only Catelyn listening. We know about this office. We have our own protections around it, and if it's leaky, they've gotten past all my bodyguards and nothing is safe. Just figure, there are 351 Azzi at Planis, and somebody killed Thieu, and somebody killed Patil. I'm betting they got a professional in to take out Patil somehow. Maybe Azzi, maybe not. And Azzi didn't originate the idea, Grant said. I agree with you, Ari said, and Azzi didn't. But I'd be interested to hear your thinking on motivation. You're not Green Barracks. I'm House, Grant said, and I hardly remember when I wasn't. I absorbed my values from tape, from instruction, and from being part of the household. That changed, Ari said. Ari, Justin said, a warn-off. Grant, you don't have to answer me. I'm not being a supervisor. I'm just curious where your focus is. Classified, Justin said.
Grant shrugged. Not hard to guess it's you, born man. Ari doesn't scare me.
I really don't want to, Ari said. I'm sorry, Grant, but I don't want to ask my own staff, and I want an Azzi viewpoint on this question. In your psych set, could anybody get you to kill?
An easy shrug. He could.
Ari, leave it.
I'm not at all conflicted about it, Grant said. No more than Florian would be, under a hypothetical. I just ran your question through my deep sets, and there's no prohibition against it. No great emotional charge to compare with my attachment to your orders, Justin.
Well, then shut up, for God's sake. Quit answering her damned questions.
I have a strong attachment to questions, too, Grant said, with a little tilt of the head, with humor. Can't resist them, if they're hypothetical. Or I'll think about it all night.
Don't, if you please.
Now I'm conflicted, Grant said, because it's actually an interesting question. You're saying some Azzi out at Planis murdered Thieu simply because some born man asked him to.
Might have. Aban probably murdered the first Ari.
That's my prime candidate, Justin said. That's what I believe.
I don't think I'd botch it, however, Grant said. If I was asked to do a murder, I'd look up techniques and pick one I knew I could carry out.
Now I'm angry, Justin said. It's not damned funny, Ari.
I know it's not, she said, and I won't run a calm down on Grant. That's your job. He's just the closest alpha I could ask who's not security, and a beta couldn't. I'm sorry, Grant. Justin's concerned about you, and I haven't been entirely nice. I'd leave the office, Grant said, if it weren't an interesting question. And I've thought about it. What I would do. What I could do if someone threatened him. I told myself I could, and would. I actually take a certain comfort in that.
Same, Justin said, on this side.
She nodded. It's nice to have somebody that close, she said. I do. I'm glad you both do. She took something from her coat pocket, which turned out to be 2 comm units, and she laid them on the nearest table. Those are exactly the same as Florian's, as Catlin's. A few limitations. They only call base 1. They can only get voice contact if somebody calls you back, and if you hit the red button, they're going to bring down the ceiling, so don't use that unless you have to. Just carry them, and don't, for God's sake, lose them. If you see anything suspicious around you, if you want someone to show up quietly and intervene, hit any button but the red one. If you hit the red one, figure you're going to get an armed response. Understand?
Understood,
Justin said, looking a little mollified. I hope you'll never need them, she said, but I'm carrying my own. She touched the door. And don't put yourselves in situations. Please.
Like visiting my father?
You'll protect Grant, she said, and he'll protect you. You do what you want to do. She left then. She'd made Justin mad for a few minutes, and she hadn't wanted to, but she felt better, knowing Grant wasn't limited in Justin's defense. She'd suspected the answer she'd get, but she'd not been entirely sure she'd believe it. Now she did. And that was good. And with that, I gotta run.
That gets us to Book 3 of Regenesis. We'll see what happens. We'll see how we go. Oh, wow. Wait, Book 3, Section 3? Sorry, that gets us to Section 3. We've been on Book 3. That gets us to Section 3 of Book 3. There we go. I know words. Good. Yeah, that'll be perfect. Get us to Section 4 tomorrow, presumably. My schedule is up in the air, unfortunately, so I don't know what's going on. So if it turns out that I can't, I will leave a message in the Discord. And if you aren't on the Discord, that's totally okay. I 100% get it. I'm actually back you 1,000%. I don't know really how you're able to tune in to me regularly, other than using the YouTube interface for subscriptions and whatnot. So I guess if you want to know when I'm doing stuff, that'll be your best vector. I realize that sounds like I'm trying to finagle you into liking and subscribing this video. I will never do that. Do it on your own recognizance because it's something you want to do. Don't do it because I told you to. Do it for what benefits it gives you, not me, because I make no money off these and don't ever intend to. Any hoozle bootsits. That'll do it for today. Stay safe, stay sane, be decent to each other, and